Breaking news, Donald Trump says the government does in fact know all about those drones over New Jersey.
Our military knows and our president knows.
And importantly, there are no reported or confirmed drone sightings in any restricted airspace.
Is that true? Then why is CNN reporting otherwise? Then there are the drones over the nation's capital that got reported. But it's not even the first time that UFO, UAP activity has occurred in the nation's capital. 1952, there was a swarm. And in this video, I want to connect the dots between UFOs, UAPs, drone swarms, and the occult, and the message of Our Lady Revelation from 1947. By the way, my name is Joe McClane. I host a radio program called A Catholic Take, where we look at the world through a Catholic lens. I'd love for you to hang out with us. If you like it, give it a thumbs up and let us know what you think in the comments below. Let's talk about those UFOs, those drones over New Jersey, those UAPs, the mysterious activities and lights in the skies, orbs and school bus-sized drones and loud noises and no sound and no lights. It just is all over the place. And it's not just on the eastern seaboard, western seaboard, South America, Asia, Europe, and all around. The stories are getting more and more interesting and more intense. Donald Trump has come out with a statement, and he says one thing in particular that really caught my attention. I want to talk about that. But I also want to talk about the year 1947 and how that played a critical year for what might have been a UFO, alien, drone invasion over the nation's capital in 1952. And it seems that no matter how many things change, they all seem to stay the same because the government is playing and giving the same message from 1952 to this very day. I'm going to show you that. But before we go, I've got the answer too. Also from 1947, Our Lady told us how to have a state of grace, a state of peace, and in a world filled with anxiety and confusion and manipulation, and how she warned us about these days and what we should do about that. All of that coming up in this video. Let's start with Donald Trump and what he had to say. And one thing in particular stands out to me. Have a listen.
Good to see you.
Can you comment on the drones that are flying around New Jersey ports? It seems like the American people have a big disconnect.
The government knows what is happening. Look, our military knows where they took off from. If it's a garage, they can go right into that garage. They know where it came from and where it went. And for some reason, they don't want to comment. And I think they'd be better off saying what it is. Our military knows and our president knows. And for some reason, they want to keep people in suspense.
Do you think he's telling the truth? Do you think he's just embellishing as Donald Trump is wont to do? Or is he saying something cryptically based on maybe some information he's been given because he is the president-elect and he does get daily briefings? What do you think? Let me know below.
I can't imagine it's the enemy, because if it was the enemy, they'd blast it out. Even if they were late, they'd blast it. Something strange is going on. For some reason, they don't want to tell the people, and they should, because the people are really, I mean, they happen to be over Bedminster.
Will you shoot them down?
They're very close to Bedminster. I think maybe I won't spend the weekend in Bedminster. I've decided to cancel my trip.
Have you received an intelligence briefing on the drones?
I don't want to comment on that.
Ooh, did you see that? Did you receive any intelligence briefings on the drones? I don't want to comment on that. He obviously, I don't know. What do you think? I think he has. I think he has to have been briefed on these drone stories in his daily intelligence briefings as the president-elect of the United States. But look at his body language. He got very serious, turned his whole body towards the reporter. Let's have another listen.
To cancel my trip.
Have you received an intelligence briefing on the drones?
I don't want to comment on that.
Look at that. He turns his body ever so slightly towards her, squares off on her. That seems very serious, not at all embellished, just very, very serious. I think, in fact, that's a tell to me that, in fact, he has received some information on these drones that he knows, which is why he's saying the government knows and is not telling us. What do you think? Let me know below. But let's contrast that to John Kirby, White House National Security Communications Advisor, who had this to say a couple of days ago.
And importantly, there are no reported or confirmed drone sightings in any restricted airspace. Now, that said, we certainly take seriously the threat that can be posed by unmanned aircraft systems, which is why law enforcement and other agencies continue to support New Jersey and investigate the reports, even though they have uncovered no malicious activity or intent at this particular
Okay, so you don't know where they come from. You don't know where they go. You don't know who's behind it all, but you do know there's no intent for evil. How is that exactly? Wright-Patterson Air Force Base closed down because of suspicious drone activity. That seems like restricted airspace. So you got that one wrong, John. Ramstein Air Force Base reported suspicious drone activity. You got that one wrong, John. There's the naval facility in New Jersey, the armory in New Jersey, let alone, how about that Virginia encroachment by a swarm of drones back in October of 2023? It would seem, John, that there is a lot, let alone the balloon from China that swept across our country more than once, that also invaded our airspace. I mean, we seem to have a pattern here of lots of incursion in restricted airspace, let alone restricted airspace like, for instance, the nation's capital. Yeah, there are reports of UFO, UAP, drone activity over the U.S. national capital in Washington, D.C., that seems to be unexplainable. Is that just an airplane on approach to landing at Ronald Reagan Airport? Maybe. I don't know. What do I know? Maybe this is faked. I don't know. But I do know it is not the first time that drones or UFOs, UAPs, have swarmed the nation's capital. Did you know that in 1952, there were unidentified flying objects flying over the nation's capital? In fact, it's not just me reporting it, it's also Wikipedia. So if you don't like me or you don't like the book I'm about to share with you, you might like the Wikipedia article I'll put down below. And you can read it for yourself. In July of 1952, in fact, there were 2 consecutive weekends that this, in fact, happened. And the Air Force recorded it, and they had no explanation. In fact, here's the general giving a response to the press after all of this, when he tried, just like John Kirby, to dismiss most of this by saying, oh, we've already explained all of those, but there are a few that we can't explain. Here's what he had to say.
However, there have been a certain percentage of this volume of reports that have been made by credible observers of relatively incredible things. It is this group of observations that we now are attempting to resolve. Our basic difficulty in dealing with these is that there is no measurement of them that makes it possible for us to put them in any pattern that would be profitable for a deliberate, custom sort of analysis to take the next step.
In other words, just like John Kirby, he hasn't the slightest clue. He just used better language than John does.
We have, as of date, come to only one firm conclusion with respect to this remaining percentage, and that is that it does not contain any pattern of purpose or of consistency that we can relate with to any conceivable threat to the United States.
So let me get this straight. You haven't the slightest clue what these things are, but you know for sure they're not a threat. How do you know that exactly, I wonder? And that is very interesting. Again, I'm going to link to this because it's all linked up from the Wikipedia article on this incident over Washington, D.C. in 1952. Read it for yourself. I want to talk to you about this book right here, The Devil in Dreamland, Catholic Faith, UFOs, the Occult, and the End of the Supernatural by Ursula Bielski. She's been on my radio show before. She's coming back this week. And in this book, she's got a chapter on 1947. You might recall that's the year we got the Flying Saucer Reports by Kenneth Arnold, Air Force pilot out of California, who witnessed UFO-like, UAP-like activity and couldn't explain it in July of 1947. We also get the Roswell incident in 1947, which is very interesting because she links all of this to something that happened in California in 1946 with a man by the name of Jack Parsons. Here's what's interesting about Jack Parsons, who helped to found the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. It turns out that Jack was a disciple of a man by the name of Aleister Crowley. Aleister Crowley was an occultist, someone who practiced disgusting sex magic, someone who was diabolically possessed, in my opinion. Well, Jack Parsons was one of his devotees. In fact, it turns out that he was one of his very strong devotees, in fact, his greatest disciple in the United States. Young Jack was able to convince others to practice this form of sex magic. In fact, he would practice it outside of Caltech in a sort of a desert environment where he was banished to perform all of his scientific experiments on rocket propulsion because he believed that rockets were the future. His colleagues weren't as convinced. But he combined his laboratory experiments, his science efforts, his work with the occult. And in 1946, he performed something called the Babylon working. In fact, very interestingly enough, he would team up with a man by the name of L. Ron Hubbard to perform this sex magic. And they had this whole hippie commune thing going on there in California where they would perform this occult-like activity. On page 65 of Ursula's book, it says this unholy trinity began to engage in sex magic through an extensive ritual called Babylon working, much like Crowley's earlier New York ritual that he claimed manifested Lamb. Parsons' ritual was designed to manifest a collection of interdimensional entities, including the Moonchild Antichrist Babylon, essentially to bring about the end of Judeo-Christian civilization. Part of the process involved the so-called Enochian calls that had been used by the mystic and seer of the Middle Ages, John Dee, which he devised in a state of intense meditation. So what's going on here? They are trying to bring about a demon to inseminate a woman to bear a child that would become the Antichrist. That is what they were doing. Don't believe this book? Well, why bother? You don't have to believe this book. You can just simply go to the Telegraph article that I'm going to be linking to below. Because the Telegraph, right? The Telegraph, not crazy conspiratorial outlets, but the Telegraph. They too, and many other outlets are reporting, in fact, that Jack Parsons was, in fact, a person given over to the occult. And they performed this disgusting, diabolical sex magic many times. And he would even kill himself in one of his scientific experiments in 1952. Yeah, he would die at his own hand in July of 1952. Right after, literally right after we see the UFO, UAP drone swarm thing going down in the nation's capital. All of that back to back. So this book actually links the dots between all of that and the occult. So does this book, From Occultist to Christian, The Devil's Mistake, by Ira Wolfnotherson, also somebody I have interviewed on the program. Both of these books, which I'm going to link to below, point out the confusion, the chaos, and the manipulation that is happening at the highest levels of the U.S. government. Why? Seems so far-fetched, Joe. Is it really? I'm not so certain. Anytime someone wants something, a demon is happy to let you believe they're going to give it to you in order to get your soul to die in a state of damnation so that you can go to hell forever, right? Now imagine you're at the highest level of authority and power structure. You're in the deep state intelligence base, and you could access information, secret information that nobody else has access to from an interdimensional being, otherwise known as a demon. Imagine if they promised you things like anti-gravity technology, laser and energy-directed weapons, how to manipulate the masses to control them. All of that outlined in Project Blue Book, which is also dealt with in this book. So I'm going to link to both of those for you because there seems to be, at least according to mainstream media, the Telegraph here, that young Jack Parsons might have opened a portal to the interdimensional beings known as demons and then died and left it open. And ever since his experiment, the Babylon working in 1947 or 46, 1947 comes and we see this confluence of the diabolical and rocket science, UFOs, flying saucers, unexplained aerial activity of all kinds. And it's taking an uptick. So it's not the first time. But Our Lady has given us something of an answer for times just like this. 1947, she appears to a man named Bruno Cornicchiola at Tre Fontane, which is where St. Paul had his head lopped off and it bounced 3 times. I featured all of this in a documentary film that I released last year. I will link to it. It's on the End Times. If you've not seen it, I encourage you to check it out. I will link to it or put it in the card, maybe both. But in 1947 at the Grotto, she appeared to Bruno Cornicchiola and not only converted him, but she also warned us about times exactly like this. She says, the obscurity of the conscience and the augmentation of evil will testify to you that the time of the final catastrophe has arrived. Sounds like a time of great confusion, where people will be misled. Doesn't it? That's what it sounds like to me. Rage will be unleashed throughout all earth. Permitted satanic liberty will bring carnage to every place. A time of loss and confusion will come upon you. Unite in the love of God, where the only rule is the living gospel. Be strong in the truth of the Spirit. The sheepfold of Christ is and will be the salvation of all those who want to be saved. You will see men guided by Satan form a unitary alliance to combat any form of religion. And therein lies the trick right there. What if there was a UFO, UAP, alien invasion? A lot of people would be led astray. A lot of people would think, oh boy, religion must be bunk. What if Project Bluebeam, which is outlined in this book right here on page 77, says Project Bluebeam's alleged intent was to create a one-world government, not to drive away the devil and his minions. Governments would project into the sky images and messages from Jesus, Buddha, Muhammad, whichever one fit the population below. Each religious icon would deliver the same message. Religion is over. Follow the one world leader. Which brings us back to Our Lady of Tre Fontane. How do you get a world to accept a one world leader? How do you get a world to move away from the ark of salvation on earth, which is the Catholic Church? The sheepfold of Christ is and will be the salvation of all those who want to be saved. How do you get them to reject that and accept the lie that is a one world government and the Antichrist? This could be a step in that direction. Maybe not. Maybe. I don't know. You tell me. Leave a comment below. It goes on. You will see men guided by Satan form a unitary alliance to combat any form of religion. The Church of Christ will be struck primarily to cleanse it of the filth that is inside. Usurious trade and politics against Rome. There's a corruption within Holy Mother Church that must be cleansed. Must be cleansed. In the end, many will be converted due to the many prayers and the return to brotherly love and powerful divine manifestations. For a time, permission will be given to destroy everything and everyone. Then the Lamb will show his eternal victory. With divine power, he will destroy evil with good, the flesh with the spirit, and hate with love. I want you to let that sink in, because the message of Our Lady at Tre Fontane is one of being in a state of grace. Being at peace, as St. Padre Pio would say, pray, hope, and don't worry. If you want a state of peace in the midst of anxiety, if you want to not have to stress out about what's going on in the headline news or the doom and gloomers like myself, I can be that way many times, then live in a state of grace, pursue virtue, be obedient to your state in life. Do the things that you know you're supposed to be doing. Pray, fast, and don't worry. The world is going to go absolutely bonkers. God's holy will be done. Be faithful, and you got nothing to worry about. I'm going to put a link to it below. Did you like that video? It's okay. You can admit it. It's perfectly fine. Hey, we cover the big stories of our day, from inside the church to outside the church to all points in between, and we do it from a Catholic perspective. It's called A Catholic Take. It's a radio program Monday through Friday. We live stream it right here on this channel, by the way, so make sure to subscribe, like, and share. We would be very grateful to you. And don't forget, you're going to want to watch this video right here because you don't want to miss anything.